So let's talk about the state of the Bruins currently. They lost last night against the Buffalo Sabres 3-2 in overtime. And listen, Bruins fans, this might be a tough pill to swallow, but it is in the Bruins' best interest to lose out. To lose as many games as possible. They are not going to be a good team even if they squeak into the playoffs. They'll most likely be one and done unless they go on some miraculous turnaround. It sucks the Bruins losing games. As a fan, it's not always fun. You know, them losing a close one last night, then Sabres getting a power play in overtime. It's frustrating to watch. But at the same time, I would say this. It's actually a good thing. Because the Bruins currently sit 10th overall in the draft order. And if they keep kind of sliding and they keep going down the standings in the Eastern Conference, maybe they could end up with a top 8, top 6 pick. And then you're able to get a very good prospect and somebody that can be impactful. Maybe not immediately next season, but in 2 to 3 years. I take it as this as a Bruins fan. It sucks. This is a down year. This was just going to eventually happen at some point in time. I would also argue there's some bright spots here. I mean, Korpisalo, I thought, has had a decent year. He has done okay. I kind of actually like Korpisalo's game in comparison to Swayman. I like how he kind of battles and he's competitive. And while he's definitely not a top-tier starter by any stretch of the imagination, I think he's ideally a backup to a very good starter. But Korpisalo, I think, has been a bright spot. Some of the guys that we have brought in, I have liked what I've seen from Middlestat for the most part. I would say the thing with Kuznetsov. I'm going to butcher his name. Kuznetsov. I apologize. I have to listen to his name a few times before I make a video, so fuck it, just going free ball. And, you know, the young kid, Fraser Minton, that we got from the Toronto Maple Leafs, I mean, he had a natural hat trick for the Providence Bruins against Springfield. He's looked good, and while some people say his ceiling is a third-line center, I mean, who knows? Maybe he shocks some people and he becomes maybe a second-line center. It just seems like in close around the net and down low, he has good hands and good touch. And, you know, there's just good indications here. While there's players on this roster you're definitely frustrated with. People are going to be frustrated with Jeremy Swayman. People are going to be frustrated with just overall how the defensive play has been for this team. There are bright spots, and there's hope. And I don't think this is going to have to be a massive rebuild for the Boston Bruins. I think this is going to be somewhat of a mixture of a retool/rebuild. Right? They're going to have to bring in some guys that fit more of Elias Lindholm's style, which I don't think is going to be that difficult. I mean, right now he's essentially regulated to a third-line role, which is ideally not what you want from a guy that you paid that much money. But, you know, looking at his career, he can be around a 50, 60-point guy with the cap going up. It doesn't look as bad, but you're going to have to put some pieces around him. I still think there's a top 6 center in there somewhere. I just don't think he falls off the wagon that badly. I just don't think it's been a mesh with him with his line mates currently in Boston. So if you get somebody that, you know, fits his style on the wing, I think you can get a little bit more there. Is he the number one center that a lot of people envisioned when we got him? Absolutely not. And then, all things considered, the Bruins have missed Charlie McAvoy. The Bruins have missed Hampus Lindholm for pretty much most of the season. And when you're missing some of the top defensemen in your lineup, of course, the defense is going to take a hit, and it's not going to be to the same quality. And most teams, when they lose their top 2 defensemen, it's going to be a rough go of it, and they will struggle to be good defensively. So for me, it sucks watching this team lose. Some people take my analytical take of things that I don't care. I'm not emotional. Trust me, I'm just as frustrated and get just as angry in games as other people, but I'm able to take a step back and realize, like, hey, we've had a really good run here in Boston, some really good success, and just because we're maybe missed the playoffs for a season or two doesn't mean that we can't just get right back in the thick of things. While Sweeney has his negative reputation with some people in the fan base and, you know, maybe around the league considering how you view him, I do believe that if you can keep hitting on some draft picks, I mean, Matthew Patra, we'll see what he ultimately becomes, but there's been some flashes there. He brought in Fraser Minton, who I think looks pretty damn good there with the baby bees. If he can draft another stud and we can just keep filling out this roster intelligently, I think the Bruins should be back in the thick of it, maybe even next season. It depends on how they do things in the offseason. If they're gonna, sign some of the marquee top free agents, or maybe some of the more top guys towards the top end of the league. That will be interesting to say. I know a lot of Bruins fans have been eyeing Mitch Marner, but I just don't think he'll leave Toronto. I truly don't see it. I mean, if the Bruins could get him, hell yeah, snag him if you can, but there's other pieces out there of value that maybe not superstar level, but could give the Bruins some viable top 6 talent. And I think that's what this roster needs. And my only concern going forward is, will Jeremy Swayman be able to bounce back? Will he be able to kind of put this terrible season behind him? Because I have not really liked the body language from Swayman for the most part during this season. I just haven't. For a guy that I really, really was high on going into the season, and how he's looked very promising every single year, while I can understand the frustration builds in, some of the terrible body language and just kind of giving up on certain plays, it doesn't kind of bode well. It doesn't look good. So that has me concerned. Genuine question mark in the goalie room. Are they going to move Korpisalo and give Michael DiPietro a legitimate shot at the NHL level, which would be the smartest thing to do at this time? We'll see. But, outside of the goaltending, will Hampus Lindholm be able to ever return to 100%? Because it is concerning. Thought he was on the mend, and then it just ultimately doesn't pan out. Will this be something that's a reoccurring issue forever? There are concerns here with the Bruins roster, but I do think there's also some chances here that the Bruins can really make some differences and make some additions and draft smart and bring in some talent. Well, yeah, it sucks losing to the Sabres. I think it's kind of a good thing. I think the Bruins, further they plummet down the Eastern Conference standings, the higher draft pick they can possibly get. And who knows? Who knows who falls to you? Maybe some phenom could fall to you. I know this draft isn't as deep as other drafts in the past, but if you can get a top 8 pick, overall, you're going to be getting a very talented player with some pretty damn good upside. So, while Bruins fans, it is frustrating and it is aggravating, and I can completely understand that. I do believe that good times will be around the horizon. It just depends on how things go in this next draft, and see what the Bruins do in the offseason. I think there's potential here. I don't think it should be a massive rebuild that takes like a Buffalo Sabres 20 years. But there's going to be some bumps in the road. But there's talent. There is talent here on this roster and down below in Providence. I really do believe just a couple minor moves, and the Bruins should be at least a wild card contender next season. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. How do you feel about this season? How do you feel about the Bruins losing to the Sabres? How do you look at their outlook going forward? What do you believe? Do you believe they'll be a good team in the future? I'd love to know your thoughts. Drop a like if you want to. If you don't, I really just don't fucking care. See you in the next one.